famed NBA trainer Chris Brinkley has broken his silence about Caitlin Clark and potentially working with her to make a healthy recovery for the 2026.
Something significant has just happened in the WNBA. And this isn't about a bad call or a viral highlight. This is about control. Reports are surfacing that the Indiana Fever intentionally prevented world-renowned NBA trainer Chris Brinkley from helping Caitlin Clark during the 2025 offseason. This is the same Chris Brinkley who's trained superstars like LeBron James and Kevin Durant. Fans are understandably furious, and insiders are beginning to whisper. The central question now is, why would any team prevent their superstar from getting such elite outside help? What the Fever did next truly shocked everyone who follows the league.
Chris Brinkley is a phenomenal trainer. Now, some of you guys might not know this. Chris Brinkley is up there as well. And I got to show some love to him. But Chris Brinkley is up there. If we're talking like trainers, we're talking getting players ready. Chris Brinkley worked with LeBron James, Kevin Durant. The list goes on and on and on.
This entire story began quite subtly, almost going unnoticed. Chris Brinkley was a guest on a smaller basketball podcast, completely relaxed and laughing with the hosts while sharing details about his training sessions with NBA legends. But then, almost as an afterthought, he casually brought up Caitlin Clark. He revealed that he and Caitlin had planned to work together during the offseason, but those plans ultimately fell through because the Indiana Fever simply didn't allow it.
So Caitlin Clark finished rookie season. We've been talking for a few years, and
you worked with Caitlin Clark?
So we were going to work last summer, but I was gonna have to go to Indianapolis, and I respected when you're young on your team, you work out at your practice facility.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping now this season, this off season,
I love it.
I'm hoping that she'll come to New York and we'll get some work. And she's the reason why the WNBA has become so big. I would love to work with her.
Yeah.
That single line, "I was supposed to go to Indianapolis, but it wasn't allowed," sent immediate shockwaves across social media. Fans quickly clipped that specific moment and shared it everywhere, from X to TikTok and Reddit. And within just a few hours, what started as a small leak quickly turned into a massive firestorm. People simply couldn't believe what they were hearing. Why would the Fever stop the very player who had single-handedly carried their franchise from obscurity to record-breaking viewership, from training with one of the absolute best in the business?
I'm talking about multiple NBA champions this young man has been featured with, worked with, and for Caitlin Clark to potentially be on his list, somebody he's eager to work with, Caitlin Clark need to quick, fast, swiftly start working with him, because we know there's a lot of things to Caitlin Clark game that she could work on.
Brinkley's tone. What's interesting here is Brinkley's tone. It wasn't bitter, but it definitely revealed a deep sense of frustration. He mentioned respecting team rules, yet his words clearly hinted at much deeper issues: control, ego, and potentially even internal politics within the Fever organization. This didn't feel like a simple scheduling conflict. It felt entirely deliberate. As fans endlessly replayed the clip, online discussions exploded. Some speculated the Fever wanted to micromanage every aspect of Caitlin's recovery, specifically to avoid any outside influence. Others suggested the coaching staff feared losing credit for her progress. Then came the inevitable comparisons. NBA superstars like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Carmelo Anthony have complete freedom to train with anyone they choose. So, why was Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's biggest draw, being specifically restricted?
If she could somehow work with Chris, he can come up with a system to help her either get out of these tough situations that she be in, especially in certain traps, and then turn around and once again adjust, either shoot off the dribble, something to help her get out of these situations with the physicality of the league. That'd be dope.
The leak rapidly intensified as basketball insiders confirmed Brinkley had repeatedly tried to reach out, only to be told the team wanted Caitlin to remain under internal supervision. This phrasing immediately raised red flags for many, sounding less like medical care and more like outright possession. By the end of that very day, hashtags like Let Caitlin Train and Free Caitlin Clark were trending, as what began as a casual podcast mention exploded into a full-blown scandal, leaving everyone demanding answers about what the Fever were truly hiding. To grasp the depth of fan fury, you need to understand Chris Brickley's stature in the basketball world. He's not just another social media coach, he's the highly trusted trainer for NBA titans like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and Donovan Mitchell. Brickley built his reputation by transforming elite athletes into legends, using methods most teams simply can't replicate. It's about transformation, not just drill. So when Brickley expressed his eagerness to work with Caitlin Clark, it sounded like an ideal pairing, a generational talent meeting one of the greatest trainers alive. Fans immediately envisioned Caitlin refining her footwork, mastering NBA-level movements, and building a frame strong enough to withstand the WNBA's brutal physicality, especially after the constant targeting and relentless double teams had clearly taken their toll. Brickley could have helped her evolve, not merely recover. But that dream was abruptly shut down by the Fever's management. And that's precisely where things began to feel deeply wrong. Instead of embracing such a significant opportunity, the organization reportedly stepped in and restricted it, offering the justification that they wanted her to train under team supervision. To most fans, this felt like a remarkably weak excuse. The Fever's internal staff, despite their experience, had already faced scrutiny for questionable conditioning programs, which many believed contributed to Caitlin's lingering injuries. Refusing outside, proven professional help looked less like protection and more like territorialism, creating terrible optics. Brickley's willingness to travel to Indianapolis, adapt to the team's schedule, and even adhere to their medical protocols proved this wasn't about logistics. It was undeniably about control. In a league where players are advocating for equal treatment and autonomy, blocking Caitlin Clark from elite training looked like a significant step backward, potentially exposing a deep power struggle within the Fever. As more details surfaced, fans started connecting the dots, piecing together a troubling pattern. The Indiana Fever had consistently kept Caitlin Clark's development under tight internal control. Everything, from her training schedule to her medical care, had to pass through the team's internal structure. This was publicly presented as protecting their investment, but insiders suggested it was far more than that. The Fever's staff reportedly limited her access to external trainers, even those with stellar reputations, under the guise of prioritizing continuity and safety. Yet, the actual results told a different story. Nagging injuries, visible fatigue, and a rookie season that appeared more painful than progressive. During the 2025 season, Clark experienced multiple setbacks that fans attributed to poor physical management. Reports indicated she was pushed to bulk up too quickly to handle the league's physicality. A regimen that seemingly slowed her down, disrupted her natural rhythm, and potentially worsened her lower body strain. Despite this, the Fever doubled down on their method. Their control over her recovery became so extreme that even off-season training required clearance from team officials. This is precisely why Brickley's revelation resonated so powerfully. It confirmed what many had already suspected. Behind closed doors, team insiders reportedly viewed outside trainers like Brickley as potential disruptors. They didn't want him influencing Caitlin's form, her approach, or even her mindset. In essence, the Fever wanted her molded entirely by their philosophy, a system that seemingly prioritized uniformity over individuality. This wasn't solely about physical recovery anymore, it became about control over brand and image. Meanwhile, Caitlin herself remains silent. She is known for her loyalty, professionalism, and her avoidance of public drama, but silence in this case did not imply consent. Her lack of a public statement only amplified the fans' voices, who loudly called out the organization for suffocating the very player responsible for their resurgence. The controversy rapidly shifted from a mere training dispute to a much larger, more critical question. Was the Fever genuinely invested in Caitlin's long-term success, or were they primarily focused on maintaining dominance over her future? By mid-2025, the warning signs were everywhere. Caitlin Clark, once the unstoppable force of women's basketball, began to show undeniable signs of strain. Her movements seemed heavier, her explosive quickness dulled, and her body language often screamed fatigue. This was clearly more than just the natural wear and tear of a long season. Fans could instinctively tell something deeper was amiss. Reports then emerged that she had been following a new aggressive muscle-building regimen, specifically designed by the Fever staff. Yet, instead of enhancing her resilience, this program allegedly made her body even more vulnerable to injury. The irony was heartbreaking. The very training intended to protect her might have been actively breaking her down. As the season continued, so did the frustration. Social media was flooded with clips comparing her fluid college play to her often sluggish professional performance. Analysts questioned why her minutes weren't being managed more effectively, and why her recovery appeared rushed. Some even pointed out that she had seemingly lost her signature step-back motion, a move that once terrified defenders. The conversation rapidly shifted from is she adapting to is she being overworked? And that's when Chris Brickley's name inevitably resurfaced. Fans realized the Fever had directly denied Caitlin access to one of the few trainers genuinely capable of reversing this physical decline. Brickley specializes in rebuilding players after grueling seasons, focusing on fluidity, stability, and mental recalibration. Precisely what Caitlin desperately needed. Instead, she remained confined to a rigid system designed for short-term output, not long-term sustainability. It wasn't about her growth anymore, it was about control and maintaining specific optics. The team simply wanted her in their gym, not in the hands of someone they couldn't directly supervise. By the time the playoffs arrived, the damage was tragically visible. Clark played through pain, her confidence tested every single night. The Fever's gamble to manage her recovery entirely internally had clearly backfired. What was initially framed as player protection had dramatically morphed into a public relations nightmare. Fans began asking the toughest question yet. Was Caitlin Clark's career longevity being sacrificed for the Fever's ego-driven need to control her every single move? The precise moment that ignited this entire firestorm stemmed from that casual podcast conversation. Chris Brickley wasn't trying to stir controversy, he was simply sharing anecdotes from his extensive career. But when the host asked which players he hoped to work with next, he mentioned Caitlin Clark, and then dropped the line that changed absolutely everything. We were supposed to work together last summer, but I couldn't go to Indianapolis. The team didn't allow it. The hosts might have laughed it off, but the internet certainly did. That clip spread like wildfire. And suddenly, the entire basketball world was dissecting every single syllable of what Brickley had just said. It didn't take long for fans to start asking the real, hard questions. Why would the Fever stop him? Was there a contractual clause that explicitly forbade outside trainers? Or did someone specific in management make that unilateral call? Within hours, sports journalists began connecting the dots between Brickley's statement and earlier reports regarding the team's highly restrictive medical oversight. The clip's tone, respectful yet unmistakably disappointed, made it abundantly clear that the block was not mutual. Brickley genuinely wanted to help. The Fever unequivocally said no. Once the clip reached basketball Twitter, the dam broke. Major sports pages reposted it. Influencers reacted vehemently, and fan accounts flooded the comments with outrage. Words like sabotage, control, and mismanagement completely dominated the replies. Even former players joined the conversation, stating emphatically that if someone of Brickley's caliber had offered to train them, their teams would have celebrated, not interfered. The Fever's silence only exacerbated the situation. No statement, no clarification, just corporate stillness while the internet burned. Then came the investigative breakdowns. Analysts meticulously replayed Brickley's tone frame by frame, emphasizing his phrasing about team restrictions. Every major podcast and YouTube sports show covered it within 24 hours. By the very next morning, "Let Caitlin train" was trending across all platforms. What had started as an offhand remark rapidly transformed into a massive public indictment of the Fever's handling of their franchise player. It wasn't just a leak anymore. It was concrete evidence of a system that seemed determined to control Caitlin Clark instead of empowering her. As the outrage continued to build online, something truly strange began to happen. Mainstream sports media outlets, which had spent months covering every minor Caitlin Clark headline, suddenly went completely silent. There were no panel debates, no investigative pieces, no deep dives into why the Fever would block one of basketball's top trainers from working with their brightest star. Fans immediately noticed this glaring blackout. Independent creators and YouTube channels began stepping in to fill the void, rigorously breaking down Brickley's quote and demanding transparency. This pervasive silence from the top only made the entire situation feel even more suspicious. The WNBA's official channels also failed to issue a statement. No clarification from the league, no denial, not even a generic "we support our players' training choices." It was absolute radio silence. Meanwhile, on social media, the narrative spiraled completely out of control. Fans began to believe the league was actively protecting the Fever. Hashtags like cheering, "Protect Caitlin" and "Free Caitlin Clark" flooded timelines, with some even tagging NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, urging him to intervene. For a league that constantly promotes empowerment and transparency, the silence was absolutely deafening. Inside league circles, reports suggested a growing discomfort. Several WNBA insiders reportedly warned that this situation could quickly spiral into a catastrophic public relations disaster if not addressed promptly. Yet, instead of clearing things up, both the Fever and WNBA PR departments appeared to be simply waiting it out, seemingly hoping the controversy would just fade away. It didn't. Every passing hour of silence only made the Fever look demonstrably guiltier. Podcasts and sports personalities began drawing direct comparisons to past WNBA controversies. Unaddressed referee bias, mishandlings of injuries, and a persistent lack of player autonomy, connecting them all under one overarching theme: control. When smaller outlets finally pushed questions toward league officials, they received the exact same response: no comment. That stark two-word reply only fueled more widespread anger. It wasn't just about a blocked trainer anymore. Fans were now overtly accusing the WNBA of enabling a culture that consistently prioritized power over player welfare. The silence was no longer protecting the brand. It was actively destroying trust, one unanswered question at a time. As the chaos intensified, attention predictably shifted toward an even bigger name: Adam Silver. Many fans overlooked the fact that the NBA commissioner also plays a crucial, behind-the-scenes role in the WNBA's. While Cassie Engelbert is the public face of the league, Silver's influence runs incredibly deep. He was the architect behind the WNBA's groundbreaking $2 billion media rights deal, a move that gave the NBA partial leverage over how controversies are managed. So when the Brickley situation erupted, many began to seriously wonder, was Silver aware of what the Fever were doing, or was this yet another case of the league protecting itself from potential embarrassment? Reports soon began circulating that Silver had actually been briefed about growing tensions surrounding Caitlin Clark's management months before the leak occurred. Allegedly, multiple agents and player representatives had voiced significant concerns about the Fever's restrictive training policies, particularly how they limited external trainers and physical therapists. Yet nothing changed. That persistent silence from the top now looked less like oversight and more like intentionality, a calculated move to keep things quiet until the media heat died down. But the Brickley leak threw everything completely off balance. It was no longer merely an internal issue, it was public, deeply emotional, and impossible to contain. The timing made it even worse, as the NBA was already battling its own scandals involving illegal betting, fake injuries, and player manipulation. The last thing Silver needed was another controversy spilling into the WNBA. Yet the parallels were simply too clear to ignore: control, secrecy, and extensive damage control. Fans began accusing Silver of enabling a system where both leagues prioritized reputation over transparency. The WNBA's silence, operating under his broad umbrella of influence, looked less like incompetence and more like a deliberate strategy. Behind closed doors, sources claimed that league officials were frantically scrambling to craft a unified response that wouldn't implicate anyone. But every passing day of silence only intensified suspicion. The question echoing through social media was brutal but entirely fair. If Adam Silver can overhaul NBA ethics and consistently hold teams accountable, why hasn't he done the same for the WNBA? By the time a full week had passed since the podcast leak, the damage was largely irreversible. The Indiana Fever had plummeted from being one of the league's most celebrated teams to its most heavily questioned. Their silence was no longer perceived as professionalism, it looked unmistakably like guilt. Fans who once proudly wore Caitlin Clark jerseys were now posting videos burning Fever merchandise, openly accusing the franchise of sabotaging their own star. The backlash was relentless, and its effects extended far beyond just Indiana. The entire WNBA began to feel the ripple effects. Social media transformed into a battlefield, with former players, journalists, and even casual fans demanding immediate accountability. Comment sections were filled with profound frustration, directed not just at the Fever, but at the entire system that allowed such a situation to unfold. People started digging deeply into the team's medical staff, training protocols, and their past history with player injury. Old rumors about mishandled rehab programs and poor treatment resurfaced, painting a grim picture of a franchise seemingly more concerned with control than with player care. Every new piece of evidence made it increasingly difficult for the Fever to defend themselves. Sponsors quietly began pulling back promotional posts. Major brands that had once enthusiastically celebrated Caitlin Clark's rookie rise started deliberately distancing their logos from the controversy. Even Nike, which had heavily invested in her image, reportedly expressed private concern about how the situation could affect her brand. The WNBA's reputation, already somewhat fragile, was now under direct fire from the very fan base that had so passionately reignited its popularity. What was supposed to be a new golden era had tragically devolved into a public relations nightmare. And through it all, Caitlin Clark herself remained completely silent. That silence became profoundly symbolic, a quiet protest that spoke volumes more than any official statement ever could. The public interpreted her restraint as professionalism, while many others saw it as a clear sign of pain. The league's significant mishandling of one player had ignited a much larger movement. Fans no longer just wanted entertainment, they demanded justice. What started with a single, seemingly innocuous podcast line had escalated into a full-blown reckoning, one that promises to forever change how teams treat their players and how fans hold them accountable. The Chris Brickley leak didn't just expose a single team decision, it exposed an entire system built on control and silence. The Indiana Fever may have attempted to protect their image, but in doing so, they irrevocably shattered trust with their fan base and quite possibly with Caitlin Clark herself. What began as a quiet off-season story ultimately transformed into a national discussion about power, player rights, and transparency in women's sports. Now, the entire world is watching. The Fever can no longer hide behind convenient policies or carefully crafted PR statement. This controversy has already irrevocably changed the WNBA, and there is absolutely no turning back.